Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Celtic Ways morning briefing. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined today by Josh McCafferty. We're here to chat through everything going on at Celtic, and there is a lot going on because they've just appointed a new manager, and there's lots to talk about. Before we get started, a word from our sponsor at Simply Furniture, an independent brand dedicated to bringing luxury and contemporary style into homes across the UK. Their dedicated team ensures your furniture is delivered with care right to your doorstep. If you want to see their range up close, you can visit their showroom in Hillington, Glasgow, and if you mention the Celtic Way, you get a special in-store discount. We thank them as always for their sponsorship of the show. Josh, Wilfried Nancy, that's the official pronunciation coming out of Celtic from yesterday. What was your first impressions of him coming into the role? There was a lot of video coming out of Celtic yesterday. He was getting a tour of Lennoxtown. They were doing some behind-the-scenes shots. They had an in-depth interview. It was kind of a get-to-know Wilfried Nancy kind of situation from the club yesterday. So what were your first impressions of that?
Yeah, I think first of all it's good that he's finally here because it feels like it's been an age since his name's been linked with the job and we've been waiting for him to arrive. So good for him to finally get here. Pretty impressed with his first Celtic TV interview, very lengthy. But then again, I've been impressed with every kind of interview I've heard from him before, so there was no real surprise there. Him going into Lennoxtown for the first time, getting a feel for it, speaking to some of the players, seeing him having an interaction with James Forrest. I like the interaction he had with the three academy boys. That was really good, kind of asking them what their biggest strengths are. And
So I think you can give us an insight on who those academy players were, Josh. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was Hayden Borland, who's a central defender who kind of came into the team, the B team, last season midway through. The goalkeeper Corey Shaw, and then there's a young striker Lucas Cleary who's making waves in the academy. I think he scored over 60 goals for one of the youth teams last season. So those are three boys who are coming up and doing well. And Nancy speaking to them, taking time out of his first day, which was good to see. Not just say hi, hello, how you doing? It was actually what's the best part of his game and what do you think's a part of his game?
He was. If you haven't seen this, folks, it was a clip doing the rounds on social media. Essentially, Wilfried Nancy's talking to these youth players. He's asking each other what the strengths and weaknesses of the other guys in the little triangle were, which was interesting. Yeah. I think that's quite a well-established kind of leadership concept, but it's interesting that he's immediately doing that in his first meeting with folks when he's just kind of milling about Lennoxtown. I did quite like to see that, Josh, I have to say as well. And his in-depth interview, very, he put forward a compelling case for his football and outlook, Josh. He talked in depth about what his football style is, about his background and how that's formed, how he relates to people and connects with people. The main themes, Josh, coming out of that interview were about connection, communication, and forging this unit. I think he sees himself as a kind of unifying force within that group. He made it very clear. He said, I think one of the quotes was, "I'm not a boss. I am a leader." He doesn't see himself as a kind of dictatorial, this is my way and everything has to be done my way. He's very much a collaborative person who is a guiding force rather than a kind of telling everyone what to do, basically.
Yeah, definitely. As well, he's quite intriguing. He actually went quite in depth with his style and his approach, which some managers maybe don't do. I think that was quite refreshing to hear. I remember, obviously, when Brendan Rodgers was in charge, he'd go in depth tactical stuff, but maybe not to that extent, similar to Andrew Postecoglou and Neil Lennon. So, no, that was good to hear. And yeah, he's coming up with all these masterful quotes and "I'm not a boss, I'm a leader," all these things that will grab the headlines, and he's seemingly very good at that. In terms of what he said about the 3-4-3 formation, he was asked about that, how difficult it will be to implement that type of thing so early on in your time. And I don't know about anyone else or yourself, John, but the feeling I got from his answer to the question was that I don't think he's going to do it straight away, because there's obviously a lot of time, not a lot of time on the training pitch due to the number of games that are happening week in, week out at the minute. So that's what I kind of took from it as well.
So just a catch up on what actually happened yesterday. Obviously, it was his very first day at Lennoxtown, so he arrived around lunchtime, I believe. He got a tour of the facilities, he met staff, he met some of the kind of the players rehabilitating in the gym, etc. And then there was a scheduled meeting with the entire Celtic squad. And obviously we're not privy to kind of what he said in that meeting, but he did give it a little bit of insight on that, and it ties into what Josh was just alluding to there, in that he understands the situation he's coming into, and actually he says, this is new for him too. He's never taken a charge of a team mid-season, and his kind of way of doing things, it'll be a step-by-step process, rather than a sorry, I'll just pull up the right quotes here. he says it's going to be new for me. I'm going to be honest with you. I evaluated everything. I'll now try now to add nuances, not to change everything, but to add nuances. After that, I'll be patient, knowing that patience in my job doesn't exist. At the same time, it's about clarity with the players. This is the most important. How we're going to be able to live together and how we're going to be able to have more certainty, depending on all the structure and all the culture that we have together. After that, we're going to talk about philosophy. But again, we're going to go step by step. The idea is not to change everything. The idea is to add certain things. So I kind of acknowledge him there that this is a unique situation. He doesn't have a pre-season. He doesn't have all this time to drill into the players. His first training session is only this morning, Josh, and I imagine it'll very much be a kind of introductory thing again, where he's I don't think he's going to radically change the formation against Hearts at the weekend, for example, or really change Celtic style of play. This is for him as much as anyone about getting to know the players that are there.
Yeah, I think Wilfried Nancy will reckon, or I caught myself saying Nancy, that it's actually Nancy, as he said himself yesterday, but I think he recognises that he's coming into a situation where the Celtic team is in really good form and they're doing well, and they've won 7 out of their last 8 games, and they've got 3 crucial matches coming up, 2 must-win games domestically, obviously against Hearts and St Mirren. I think he knows that it would be stupid and foolish to come in and upset the apple cart and immediately change the whole system to a 3-4-3 when the team have got 2 games that they need to win. You could argue that it's not broken, so don't fix it. I think, like Nancy says, he will add some nuances to the system that match his ideas, but without kind of making a drastic overhaul. I just wonder when that drastic overhaul, or if he eventually does change to the 3-4-3, because maybe it's not set in stone that he's actually going to do that at the end of the day, but if it does, I just wonder when it will be, because Celtic have only got 1 free week between now and around February time, and that's the Christmas week. So he's not got a lot of time on the training pitch, so is he going to stick with the 4 at the back? I'm just very intrigued.
Yeah, and just on his style of play, he talked about this relationist and that style that he has. He says we need the non-verbal communication. We need to run together to score a goal. We need to run together to defend a goal. So that's why my job is to create this environment for my players to be able to connect together with clarity. Again, he uses the word clarity. My style of play is about the way I live. Simple as that. I like to be proactive in my life. I like to discover things. I also like to try things, because I believe that the more you're going to try things, the more you're going to be able to learn, and the more you're going to be able to maximize your chance of having success in your life. So what I want to do on the pitch is the same. Quite, expressive language. Obviously, he's not drilling into the detail of what he's going to be working on with the players, but it's about. I think it's about he wants to set a general culture and environment for players to flourish as individuals. Again, he said consistently, that it's about forging these connections and ensuring that people are able to grow as people as much as anything. That's what really came through for me. He talked a bit about his background. I think his father was in the French Navy. He had to move around a lot when he was young, and he said that formed his kind of ability to connect with people. He's, as we said at the start, the quote was, "I don't consider myself as a boss, I am a leader. For me, the definition of leader is to create a good environment to help and to give the possibility to the people that I work with to express themselves. For me, this is so important. Because of my background, I was able to understand and to connect with people. I'm not saying I have a secret. I don't have a secret. For me, it is really important also to discover different cultures." So I was impressed with him. As I said, I felt he put forward a compelling case. Now, the big unknown, Josh, is whether that translates to the football pitch. Obviously, the football needs to back up kind of what he's saying in these interviews, etc., and that will come with time. I think the key thing for me, and really what my message would be around all of this, and I would say this about any manager, it's just keeping an open mind about who this guy is and what he's willing to do. Because I don't think anybody really knows how this is going to play out and how successful this is going to be. He even admits himself that there are no unknowns here and that this is a new situation for him. So it's really about keeping an open mind to all of these concepts that he's talking about, and hope that we start to see it kind of, on the pitch. That's really what the sign of a successful team is. When what the manager is saying or the head coach is saying, you actually see it on the football pitch and the way that Celtic function and play.
I think the good thing is, and we can be positive about, is the fact that the Celtic squad have shown their levels in recent weeks under Martin O'Neill. Before Brendan Rodgers left, there were concerns over this group of Celtic players, where the real winners, did they have the mettle to go all the way? And I think the recent run of form has showed that yes, they do. So now we know they can reach those levels. It's about, can they do that now under Wilfried Nancy? Can he get the best out of them? And it speaks a lot there about multicultural, connecting with people from different countries and different backgrounds. This is a Celtic squad that spans the globe. There are players from several different countries and continents in there, so I'm sure he's going to enjoy that. I'm really interested to see what players thrive under him, because usually under a new manager you get certain players who respond to his methods better than what they did the previous coaching team and manager. So there's the one or two guys who are going to come to the fore over the next couple of weeks. Just have to wait and see.
So if you're wondering, his first press conference is actually later today. Celtic put out the notification this morning. It takes place at 1:30 at Lennoxtown. So it's not the usual unveiling press conference that we see sometimes from Celtic, Josh. Sometimes they do a big event at Celtic Park and it's all that, but it's taking place at Lennoxtown, kind of in the spot of the usual pre-match media conference, really. And I suppose that's as a reflection as much as anything of the short time and turnaround between Nancy's arrival and the Hearts game. You know, there's not much time to do a big event at Celtic Park. They just need to get on with the business of preparing for Hearts. So I know you're going along to Lennoxtown later. So what are we expecting? Very similar messaging I expect from Nancy later in terms of just really communicating with supporters about what kind of guy he is and kind of how he wants to function in the role.
Yeah, I think we'll get obviously a bit of that, and from what we heard in the Celtic TV interview, tactical side of things, his connections, his family background and all that kind of stuff. But you'll probably also get a bit more about how the process came about for him joining Celtic, who was involved in that process. Was Paul Tisdale there? Was it Michael Nicholson? This type of thing. Probably also asking or he will get asked undoubtedly about transfer business, because to be honest, the January window isn't far away. It's 4 weeks or something. So he'll get asked about that. Alistair Johnston's a player he knows. He'll get asked about him, injuries, everything. So yeah, I think it'll be a very lengthy press conference this afternoon. Let's just say that. But yeah, it's weird because Brendan Rodgers, Ange Postecoglou, even Martin O'Neill, when he came back, they were all in Celtic Park. So yeah, it's a bit strange that it's at Lennoxtown. Maybe they will have the unveiling at Celtic Park at some point next week, don't know. But yeah, like you say, it's just a reflection of the whole kind of the time frame of all this.
Yeah, he looked very pleased yesterday, and he's a very laid back character. But I don't think that being laid back in that sense is a bad thing. He seems very measured and calm, and I'm sure he can get fired up when he needs to. But I just like the way he put himself across. As I say, it was a fairly in-depth actually club interview. It was actually a good club interview. I think we've seen club interviews in the past, but it feels more like PR. It felt like he was being honest and genuine, and that was actually how he is. And Celtic just kind of let him get himself across, which I think is important. I don't think you can stage manage this too much. Celtic supporters need to get to know this guy, get to understand how he really thinks about football, how he really thinks about this team. He did talk a bit about fans at the end. It was kind of like what his message to supporters are. He was obviously very complimentary. He kind of touched on themes that maybe Ange Postecoglou has in the past in terms of this kind of idea of sacrifice. I know a lot of managers do that, but it was interesting that it was kind of his first thing that he said about the sport. He said they decide to support the team knowing they can do something different. Fans, sometimes they have money, sometimes they do not have money, but they decide to come to support the team. That's why you want to see a team that runs a lot, but not in a stupid way. But we make the effort because we have to respect this. We want to bring joy and competitive spirit to maximise our chance to win trophies. What I can tell them is we're going to do everything to have good performance offensively and defensively. When it's going to be difficult, we're going to stick together and try to find a solution to get better. We do this game for them to create this kind of emotion and connection with them. Again, he used that word connection like 5 or 6 times. He used the word clarity a lot. Like, these are concepts that mean a lot to him, that he feels are just like a natural foundation for success, Josh, rather than forcing success almost. He wants to, as I say, create the ground for the Celtic players to naturally show who they are as players and what they want to achieve, which is, it's an interesting approach, I would say. It's not a groundbreaking approach, but I think it's slightly different to kind of what we've seen from some Celtic managers in the past. And actually, I think it's actually, a lot of people have been comparing him to Ange Postecoglou, but it seems very different to Ange Postecoglou. To me, Ange Postecoglou was not a kind of player person. He didn't get to know his players in depth. In fact, it seems like he barely spoke to them at some points, other than about like details in the match. But Nancy seems like a very different character, and getting to know players in depth and trying to harness something within them that better enhances the team. As I say, I think it's quite an interesting approach.
Yeah, and creating that environment in and around the club at the training ground, an environment from which they can progress and improve themselves and get better. It relates and transcends to what he actually wants on the pitch. He creates a distinct system. And how much there are certain tactical nuances, like he says, but at the end of the day, when you get into the final third, he lets the players kind of take control of what they want to do there, because they are talented football players at the end of the day. I think for Wilfried Nancy as well, I really need to get that Nancy out of my system now. Been saying it for the past couple of weeks, but I think he recognised and he will recognise that this is a huge opportunity for him personally, because obviously managing in the MLS, no disrespect, it's not one of the biggest leagues in the world, and going from a club like Columbus Crew to Celtic, it's a huge, huge jump. And he'll recognise the opportunity he has now to really make a name for himself. You know, if he could beat Hearts this weekend, but then he's got a huge European game against Roma. If he manages to pull off a result against Roma, suddenly he puts himself on the map straight away as Celtic manager. So I think he'll recognise the opportunity he's got.
Yeah, a comment from Patrick Dockett here. He says, kind of low profile for a new Celtic boss arriving. I kind of noticed that yesterday, and this isn't really a criticism of the club because it might be by design, but it did seem like kind of just like a kind of almost a low-key approach, not too much fanfare. Again, that might be a reflection of the fact that this is mid-season, and Celtic don't do this often. They don't change a manager mid-season often, so maybe it's just a reflection of like there's actually just a lot of work to be getting on with. But I don't know about you, Josh. Did you feel it was kind of low key yesterday? And again, I don't think that's a criticism of myself. It's just an observation.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just because he didn't really get to Celtic Park. You know, when a new manager comes in, you're used to seeing him, the scarf above the head picture and everything. But he's flew in clearly. I'm not sure what airport it was, but they came off the private jet at about 11 in the morning, and they're straight at Lennoxtown straight away. And like you say, there is work to be done because there's a game in 3 days. So maybe that just comes into it. You know, obviously with the held his team meeting, so he has made his presence clear to the players already. He even touched on that in the Celtic TV interview where he said he wasn't sure when he was going to have it, but then he decided he needed to have it on that day because they're so close to a match. So that kind of shows you that he's busy, there's a lot going on, and maybe that's the reason why the press conference could be at Lennoxtown today, because he maybe simply doesn't have the time to go down to Celtic Park for a press conference, big unveiling, and then drive all the way back up to Lennoxtown to then get on with some stuff that he's going to have to do for a game in 2 days. So I think there's just a lot going on, and like you said, the club have never actually had to unveil a manager in this whole new era of social media, PR and all this in the middle of slap bang, in the middle of a campaign. So I think there's probably multiple factors surrounding that.
I think there's an element of the Martin O'Neill thing as well, kind of taking centre stage on Wednesday night. It was a big thing. It was emotional for a lot of people. And listen, Martin O'Neill's an icon for so many people, and actually for an entire generation of Celtic supporters, of which I would include myself, a little bit older. He is the greatest manager I've seen in my lifetime at Celtic, and he's won the most consistently of any manager that I'll probably ever see. You know, his winning percentage is ridiculous, and obviously further enhanced with this run of kind of 7 wins from 8 matches, and that's just, I think, a natural part of that. And listen, he kind of stayed out of the limelight to let Martin O'Neill have his moment on Wednesday night, and actually I think I appreciate that, whether that was by design or not. I think that was a good step for him to not kind of step in and just kind of be sitting in the stands overlooking Martin O'Neill. I think it was important for Martin O'Neill to have that moment on Wednesday night. He did speak glowingly about Martin O'Neill, and as we know, O'Neill's kind of been talking for a couple of weeks now about how he's never spoken to Nancy, but like he would speak to him if he was asked, and if he is asked for advice, he will give it. And actually, thankfully, Wilfried Nancy took him up on that offer. He said that in his club interview. He said, I just met Martin. I didn't know him personally, but I knew him as a coach. What a guy, simple as that. What a guy. He's humble, genuine, and we had a really good discussion. I wanted to ask him advice on certain things, and we shared a few things. You have to be authentic and genuine as a person, because this is who you are with your players. And for me, Martin has been really, really good. I'm not talking about the tactical aspect and so on, because we are all competent at this point. But now this is how you manage people. When I watched the games when he took the team, I saw the joy and the confidence in the players. So I'm glad he had that meeting with Martin O'Neill. I think that's important. I think a transition in general is important, and hopefully there's maybe other staff at Celtic that he will be relying upon in the coming days. He also confirmed the trio of people coming from Columbus Crew. Again, when he talked about them, Josh, it came through to me that he wasn't just bringing these guys because of their expertise and because he knows them. It was because of how they communicate. And again, I think he used the word connection, specifically with Kwame Ampadu, who's kind of his right-hand man, as a guy who knows how to make connections with players and get the best out of them.
Yeah, and I'm glad he's managed to bring those three to the club because I think they are crucial parts of what he's trying to do and the way he works. I liked what he said about Kwame Ampadu being the most experienced member of his backroom team and bringing that kind of wiseness to the fore. So, yeah, the other two guys look very young. Their names escape me now because they're very difficult to pronounce as well. But no, looking forward to seeing them in the dugout as well on Sunday. Gavin Strachan and Stevie Woods both seem like they're still at the club. There actually has been no official communication regarding Sean Maloney,
Yeah.
Mark Fotheringham, and all those guys. So, I mean, we're kind of in the dark with them.
Yeah, the other two guys coming are Jules Guegan, who I think is kind of fitness coach. He talked about how fitness can be boring, but that he brings some creativity to that role. And Max Chalier, who I think is his kind of video analyst as well. So those are the other two guys. I think Alistair Johnston has had a kind of continuing friendship with the Jules, the fitness guy, and because it was him he was talking to when Wilfried Nancy approached him in that social media video, and he was saying, I've been texting Jules since I've left Celtic, and actually when I saw your name on the betting lists as at 10-1, I texted him and said, what's going on here? And that was quite amusing. There was a bit of a reuniting of Alistair Johnston and Wilfried Nancy, and now Johnston obviously he didn't just play for Montreal in MLS, but that's where he kind of made his name really in the eyes of like European scouts, etc. Came to Celtic fully formed, and he seemed to have thrived under Wilfried Nancy there. So I'm excited to see him when he's fully back. It's going to be months, sadly, but I'm excited to see like how Nancy impacts the players who are already here as much as we all talk about January.
Yeah, 100%. I think because there are players in there that haven't had maybe the best season so far that certainly could begin to thrive. I'm talking about people like Paulo Bernardo, even guys like Jemai Simpson-Pusey, could he come into the team? All those types of players, maybe even some players from the academy, because we know this Celtic squad is a bit threadbare. It's going to get even more threadbare in a couple of weeks when people start going away for the Africa Cup of Nations. So that's another thing he's going to have to consider. He's going to have to get the best out of what he has. At the minute, I'm sure he'll probably be asked about that today at the press conference, and he will have been doing his work, his due diligence on the Celtic squad for a number of weeks now. We know that Columbus Crew were knocked out of the playoffs a good while ago, even a month it might have been. So he's had time to sit in his hotel room, sit in his house, watch videos of Celtic and see what he's going into. Obviously, you can only do so much with that. And he'll get 2 days on the training pitch today and tomorrow for the Hearts game, and then he'll really get a feel for the squad and who he thinks can do well. I'm excited to see who can.
Glidsbar calling me out from a low-key comment. What are you expecting? Fireworks, 1,000th line on the way to Lennox Town. We haven't signed Pep. It is what it is. Could very well turn out to be a good appointment. Listen, I don't think it's a reflection of how well Wilfried Nancy will perform in this job. It was just an observation. And listen, there have been more kind of fanfare around managerial appointments in the past. And there have been thousands at some points, outside Celtic Park that happened in 2016, as we know. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the name recognition, the name value of a figure like Brendan Rodgers when he first arrived at the club. And I wasn't expecting that. I'm just saying, it's just an observation that this is a kind of more measured approach. It's a kind of getting to know this guy approach, which I actually think is probably a benefit. As I say, it's not really a criticism. It's more just like, this guy is getting to work at Lennox Town, let's get to know him. And actually, I kind of appreciate it. It feels more honest and genuine rather than having far too much PR. And actually, the videos that Celtic put out, the social media videos, they were quite raw, and they weren't polished to any great degree. And again, I appreciate that because that's what I like to see. I like to see how these guys are kind of operating in their natural environment. And we got a bit of that from Nancy yesterday.
Yeah, I think Celtic's kind of PR and social media teams and all that kind of stuff have got a wee bit of criticism over the years, and sometimes rightly so, but I think they've handled this Wilfried and Nancy arrival very well, similarly to what they did with Martin O'Neill the other day, putting out that video of his last team talk. That was very refreshing. So yeah, praise to them for what they've done in recent times.
McLaughlin saying, was it Nancy who sold us AJ? Yeah. Alistair Johnston was at Montreal. Wilfried Nancy was there as manager when Alistair Johnston arrived at Celtic, and as I say, he was fantastic from the off. He made his debut in a derby and was just ready to go. And I think he's going to have a good impact on these players. From everything I've read and everyone that I've spoke to and everyone the Celtics Ways spoke to, and as I say, we've got a piece up from Tony right now where he talks to two of Nancy's former coaching colleagues at Montreal, is that the players love him. The players get to know him immediately. He gets on their level immediately. and that's a big thing. And the players love him and want to play for him and want to thrive under him. And I think that's badly what is needed in the squad. I mean, we saw how effective that was with Martin O'Neill recently. I think those players were given everything for Martin O'Neill as a person, and I'm hoping that they can kind of buy into this guy as well. Again, it's not a prediction that I think that will happen, but I think it could happen based on kind of his job history and the way he's dealt with players in the past, and that gives me optimism as much as anything, Josh.
Yeah, and I think one of his biggest strengths from everyone we've spoken to, whether it be the guys Tony was chatting to, or I was speaking to Larry Henry Jr., who's covered kind of Nancy in the MLS, is his man management and his skills in developing players and making them improve. So I think he will certainly be able to do that. Whether he's able to do it in such a short space of time with a game this weekend remains to be seen. But I think for this weekend in isolation, I think a lot of the responsibility is going to be on the players. The likes of Callum McGregor to pull Celtic through this game. Obviously, it's Nancy's first match at the helm, and the players will be hoping to impress him and do well. But I think a lot of responsibility is on them this weekend.
Welsh Paul said maybe it was AJ who brought Nancy to the club's attention. Well, listen, the line from Celtic was that they'd been tracking this guy for quite a while and that he was their number one candidate and that they'd been taking note of his job, it seemed like, for a number of years. Now, I don't know whether it was AJ. I think the link that has been most discussed, of course, is between Paul Tisdale, Celtic's head of football operations, and Kwame Ampadu, who they worked together at Exeter City, and that seems to be one of the main links, isn't it? Yep. And you know, Kwame Ampadu is obviously very familiar with Celtic, and I think that may be where this has come from most of all. And I guess you'll certainly be asked the question at the press conference later, Josh, about like how he was identified and kind of the process, but I'll be interested to hear that answer from Wilfried Nancy. Like, Ange had a story about how he came to Celtic. Celtic had a story about how Ange came to Celtic with a lot of this Dominic Mackay patter, which they then kind of did a retcon on. They kind of rewrote the script on that a couple of years later, and when it became much more about different people at the club who brought Ange Postecoglou. So there'll be a PR line and there'll be the truth, and it'll meet in the middle somewhere, Josh.
Yeah, I think the truth probably always comes from the manager side of things. So we'll hear from Wilfried today who it was. I mean, obviously Paul Tisdale, I noticed him in some of the videos yesterday on the social media. I don't know if anyone else did, but particularly the one where James Forrest is introduced, because obviously you rarely see Paul Tisdale, and it was an English accent introducing Forrest to Nancy, and it just clicked in my head, oh, that's Paul Tisdale, and that just shows that, I mean, the guy's barely seen anywhere. So yeah, I think he will have definitely had a hand in doing it. We know Dermot Desmond eventually at the end of the day calls the shots. She'll probably hear from Nancy that he had a Zoom call with Dermot and that's how he got the job, but we don't know. We'll need to wait and see what he says.
Mark Coulter saying, I was unsure about Nancy after watching several channels talking about him, but I'm now really excited about this appointment. He needs to be given at least 2 transfer windows to get his own guys in. I think this is crucial, isn't it? I mean, he talked a bit about patience yesterday. He acknowledged that there's not really patience in this job. Patience will only come, I think, as I think the expectations is that obviously Celtic win football matches, and that's the benchmark. Every Celtic manager, since I can remember, has had a high winning percentage, beyond 60, 65%. It has to go beyond that. That's the bare minimum. Then you get judged on your style of play and the excitement you bring. Patience will come for the latter if the first comes forward, and Hearts are up first. Josh, like, it's a big match on Sunday. It's almost forgotten slightly. Now, I know Celtic have closed the points gap significantly. They're level on points with Hearts. They're only second because of goal difference, but they also hold the game in hand. But this match is massive on Sunday. If Celtic beat Hearts on Sunday, it's massive for him and the kind of perception of him coming in the door, because everyone wants to have Celtic. There is undoubted kind of, I wouldn't say concern, but there's this kind of underlying thing: is this guy going to be able to get results immediately? And that's a natural kind of trepidation. And if he does start to win immediately, I think it just supercharges everything that you'll be able to do at Celtic.
Yeah, I think it's probably an ideal start for him. As much as you could maybe want to pick a game against Dundee at home on a Wednesday night or Falkirk at home, you've got 60,000 Celtic fans behind you. You've got a chance to go top of the table for the first time this season. Can't remember the last time Celtic were top of the league. And beat a Hearts side who defeated you 3-1 at Tynecastle in the last game of the previous permanent manager's reign. So it's a massive opportunity for Nancy. And like you said, if Celtic manage to get a result and win the game, suddenly the whole narrative surrounding him changes, and then he has some momentum and real momentum behind him. So yeah, huge game. I'm expecting a really good atmosphere at Celtic Park on Sunday, and a good game of football, because this Hearts team, they've not been doing great recently. They've been dropping points kind of left, right, and centre, it seems, since they actually beat Celtic. But they still have some really good players in there. You know, Claudio Braga, Kazidis, as we've seen, Cammy Devlin in the middle of the park. Even Schwolo, I know he made an error during the week for their goal against Kilmarnock, but he's a really good goalkeeper. He's capable of pulling off some magnificent saves, as we've seen at Fir Park when they drew at Motherwell last weekend. So, yeah, Hearts are a good side. It's by no means a gimme, put it that way.
Yeah. And we had a video on Wilfried Nancy yesterday. By the way, apologies for the audio on yesterday's video. For some reason, my mic seemed to have it seemed to mess up at the exact wrong moment. I was really pleased to get Alan Morrison on and give us a different kind of insight on the show, and was really looking forward to it. So I was a bit disappointed with the audio, but it should be listenable enough with Alan's insight. It's him providing most of the insight on that. Hopefully my audio's been okay today, everyone. It's hard when you're live because you don't really find out until after, and then you can't replace the video. This is all inside baseball stuff that nobody cares about. But that is to say, if you want more on the kind of Wilfried Nancy's tactics and kind of how his kind of system and how it relates to Celtic in this season, then that chat with Alan Morrison is enjoyable. It should be enjoyable for you. An interesting comment from Frankie. He said, I remember in the AJ interview back in the day when asked if Ange was the best manager he'd worked under, he said the best was Nancy. I was raging at the time, I remember. I don't actually remember that. I don't think I've actually seen that. If other people remember that, that would be good. I might try and find that. That's an interesting one, Josh, because obviously the Ange was such a man. Maybe it was when Alistair Johnson was like in the early days of his days at the club when we're kind of getting to know him as well. But interesting comment there.
Yeah, I can't remember that, but I'm sure it was probably true. Maybe it was after Ange Postecoglou left, because I'm not sure Alistair Johnston would come out and say that while he was still the manager. But no, that's certainly interesting, because even at that time, that was before Nancy had even won the MLS Cup, won the Leagues Cup, won MLS Coach of the Year. That was when he was still in charge of Montreal, and all he won at that point was a Canadian Championship, which by all means is not very difficult to
And
win.
is that their version of the Glasgow Cup, Josh? Is that what
I think it basically pretty much is, yeah. I mean, you have the big Canadian teams, Toronto and Montreal, who go up against the kind of smaller sides, and I think it starts at a last 16 or a quarter final. You only need to win a couple of games to win it. So yeah, literally the Glasgow Cup for Canada.
So we've got all the coverage of the press conference ahead later on the website and across social media, etc. We'll have everything. We know it's his first training session this morning. I think we have photographers there, so I'm going to try and get some photos of that up on the site as well. I'm very intrigued. I'm pleased that he's in the door. I'm pleased it's all moving forward. And as I say, my first impressions were positive of Wilfried Nancy yesterday, and now I want to see how that translates to the football pitch. That's my big message. Any kind of final thoughts before we head off, Josh?
Yeah, just a massive opportunity for him on Sunday. Can he get that first win under his belt? He's got 3 colossal games, Roma as well on Thursday night. Celtic's show play campaign's back alive. Then he's got the small matter of a cup final. So life for Wilfried Nancy at Celtic is going to start at 100 mile an hour.
Yeah, it certainly is. And as I say, we'll have full coverage. I don't think we'll have a pre- and post-match show on Sunday, everyone, but we'll be back on Monday with a morning briefing on the channel as well. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about how you think Wilfried Nancy's first kind of day was and your impressions of it. Obviously, it's very early days. We can't judge him too much, but it is, first impressions are important, and I'm intrigued to hear what people thought about it. And yeah, if you like the channel, of course, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. You get to keep up to date with all of our videos, and you also get to take part in the live chat, which is lively every single morning. And I wish it was easier for me to pull in comments and talk to people on the show at the same time. I really appreciate the live chat. A lot of good talking points do come up that I do try to use, even if I don't bring them onto the show themselves. I really enjoyed live chat, and if you want to get involved in the live chat, it's only for subscribers, so you have to subscribe to the channel to get involved. It's a good community. It's the same folk every morning, and we really appreciate them. As I say, lots more from Wilfried Nancy's press conference later across the website, and we'll see you again next time on the Celtic Way.